Hey loves, this is Janelle, the relationship coach behind the Successful Invisible. And I'm here with another episode of Ish I Saw on TikTok, the crisis of boys and men. And this is something that we've kind of been hearing about sometimes, but not consistently enough. And how it actually shows up in dating and why so many women are burned out, opting out, or walking away entirely. This isn't about hating men. It's not about lowering standards. It's about understanding what patriarchy trained men not to develop: emotional literacy, identity beyond dominance, and real partnership skills, and how that gap plays out when you're trying to build a healthy relationship. Today, we're breaking down what this crisis really looks like in real life and how it shows up on dates, in relationships, and on social media. And most importantly, how to spot it early so you don't waste your time trying to fix, air quotes, what someone else refuses to heal.
I've seen a couple of articles from the conversation actually touching on this subject. I think the first one that I saw said something like, "Oh, what's happened to men?" And it was talking about the fact that if you look across pretty much every indicator in schools, particularly, you have got young girls who are starting to completely outperform young boys. And this article here is talking about the fact that, you have got men who are either not going to college or dropping out. You got men in their 30s who are still living with their parents, and they're talking about as well male suicide and just basically how miserable men are. And it's a really odd thing to say. What have men done to deserve this? Because I think you've got to remember that the starting point of all of this is a patriarchal system that was designed specifically to give us the very advantages that are being described as ones we're now unable to achieve. The system was designed specifically to work for us. So, I mean, even when you look at suicide, that's nothing to do with women. That is a byproduct of patriarchy and emotional literacy. I've spoken about this before. Anger is the only emotion that men are allowed to feel. Expressing your emotions in a healthy way, even identifying any other emotion other than anger, is unacceptable. So if we're not killing women and children, we're killing other men or killing ourselves. That has nothing to do with women. This is patriarchy. This is the system of oppression that we've been beneficiaries from, which is essentially screwing us over. And it has been for many years, by the way. It's not a new thing. The whole male loneliness epidemic, that's got nothing to do with women. That's patriarchy as well.
The reason young men are struggling? Because men haven't invested in them. So I heard a conversation yesterday where they were talking about there are not enough programs for boys, not enough resources for young men, basically not enough ways to stop them from falling into propaganda. And everybody's scratching their heads like, why are young men struggling? Why are they not getting married? But let me go ahead and connect the dots for you. The biggest reason why young men are suffering is because men have not invested in them, period. Men have not invested in boys. And why? Because socially, culturally, men are selfish. The mindset is me, I. Get the bag, get the car, get the house, get the woman. Everything is for themselves. But no thought about community, no thought about children. No thought about what comes after them. And now you can see the impact because boys are growing up lost. Young men are disconnected. Because see, women cannot teach boys how to be men. That's not how this works. And yet the people who can do it, the men, have checked out. Oh, here's the real question, because men love to complain about the youth and the boys these days. But what are you doing to change the environment for them? What are you building for the next generation? Are you going to invest in mentorship, actual presence, the community? Or are you just going to keep stacking money for yourself while you leave the boys hanging? Because see, that's where we are right now. This isn't a woman's responsibility. This isn't women's failure. This is men's house. And if men don't like the results, they need to start renovating.
I've been talking about this for a couple of years now, but more and more research is coming through that is confirming the fact that Men are in crisis. And, I'm not saying this in a way to guilt you into feeling sorry for them. It's just a fact. And it's something that they need to understand as well. Like, the first step is acceptance. The world has changed. The world that they thought that they were getting and were promised is not turning out like that for them anymore. If this man is saying that the reason why men hate women is because of our high standards, okay? If I'd had the high standards that I should have had, I never would have gone on a date with a coal miner who jerked off and left a condom on my porch for me to find. I wouldn't have gone on a date with a guy who coerced me until I ran away into the dark, and a week later I saw him at the airport with his wife. I wouldn't have dated a guy for 18 months who refused to label us and who didn't believe in emotional availability. I could go on, but I don't want to. I'm Dr. Zoe and I want to analyze it. Firstly, let's look at high standards as a concept. Women today are pretty empowered, we're pretty educated, and we're pretty financially secure on our own. So the idea that we also expect this from a partner is not high standard, it's a normal, regular standard that you should want from your partner, equality and respect. See a lot of podcast bros and that weirdly blonde man on here talking about how, how they always say, like, I like a woman who will take care of herself. She needs to work out, i.e., they're the ones who want women as accessories so that they'll look better. I totally get it, because it is threatening when women no longer want to settle for less than what they're worth, which is what they have done for a long time. They've benefited from that for a really long time, and now they're not. So yeah, I get that that's scary. Men will have you think that their big crisis is about how women now are asking too much of men. Where are all the good women? Drizzle, drizzle, blah, blah, blah. Where are the women who aren't gold diggers? Blah, blah, blah. Where are the traditional women? The real crisis is not about women. It's about how men are reacting to these shifting roles and perspectives about gender roles. Women are thriving with or without them, but mainly without them. Women know how to lead fulfilling lives without men. Men have been fed by the patriarchy the idea that their role is to be the protector, and women are saying we don't need a protector anymore. We know how to be independent. In fact, women are taught how to be independent so much better than men, because women are taught that they're going to need to look after a man. So they're taught things like how to get things done, how to cook, how to clean, how to multitask. Men are told that they're going to have a woman to do all that for them. So then when they actually end up having to do it, they can't, and lead more unhealthy and unhappy lives without women. Whereas women go on to do all of those things, but less, because they don't have to look after a man as well. Men are having to evaluate their purpose in life, if not to protect a woman. And this can be really difficult for them to do. Then they blame women instead of looking inside themselves and unpacking stuff. They turn that outward onto women as anger, which is unfair and unjust. People threatened by this tend to equate independence with rejection. They don't realize that women being independent from men doesn't mean that women hate them. It actually just means that women are independent and don't need. It means women want to renegotiate the terms of our relationships with men, and men need to also be able to come to the table on that renegotiation. We're patient because we've been taught that we mature faster than men and that we're more emotionally mature than men, so we are patient with that, but we're not that patient, because men are being very slow to pick this up. In other words, it's much easier to just say, oh, women hate us, than to actually look at the ingrained social conditioning that you have been given and unpack that. They're being challenged to redefine masculinity in a way that complements gender equality, and the ones who can do that are the ones who will survive and thrive. And are so scared that we're all going to go and do the 4B movement and withhold children, withhold marriage, withhold dating, withhold sex from them, that they've gone and started their own counter movement doing the same thing in proportion, without realizing that that won't work, because women have found our power, and our power can be withheld from them. Something that they want can be withheld from them, because society is not set up in a way anymore where we need them. The thing is, many of us still want them, but on our terms. We're not prepared to settle for domestic servitude or an abusive or controlling relationship anymore. So it's very much got to be on our terms, because we do deserve equality within a relationship, and we do deserve to live happy, healthy lives as best as we possibly can within a relationship or without one. So yeah, that's why the men are in crisis.
Men are having an identity crisis in America today, and really all over the world, because they've identified with their egos, and that has created immense suffering and really an identity crisis. They don't even know who they are. When you're born as a man, you are love. You're very close to your soul. You have innate kindness. Somewhere along the line, the ego and the messed up nature of society and your parents screwed you up. So you identify now strongly with your egoic sense. And when you strongly identify with your egoic sense, what happens? Well, that causes a lot of suffering. You will have a very negative inner critic. You have a very negative, more negative outer critic, right? Judging the world, becoming the truth sayer, right? Getting lost in your theories and ideas. Totally devoid of your conscious awareness of who you are, right? Totally devoid of the emotional part of yourself. When you're in the head is confusion, so you'll just create more confusing things in your life. Your life will fall apart. You'll have incredibly painful relationships. Even if you kind of make it, quote unquote, make it like the American dream, you have the white picket fence, 3 cars, you're still dead inside. Because you can't love in the egoic sense. In the ego, there is no love. So it may look like love. You may be sending out all the Hallmark cards. You may think you're in love. But deep down inside, in the darkest moments, in the quietest moments, the void is there. Because the void cannot be filled through the ego or through the intellect. It is only filled through the heart. It is only filled by becoming who you authentically are. But that's not taught in society. It's not taught by therapists. It's not taught by psychologists. It's not taught by anybody. Who teaches you this? They are in their minds too. They've never learned how to heal. So if you're watching this, I know you have pain. I know you have relationship problems, because I counsel people day in, day out, and I know what the average American life looks like. If you need some help, I can help you. Follow me, and I will teach you a new way to live, a heartfelt way, a way beyond the mind.
Idle ideation, especially true for our girls. This week, I found cause to worry about young men. This headline from The Hill, it caught my eye. Most young men are single. Most young women are not. The story reported that as of 2022, Pew Research Center found 30% of U.S. adults are neither married, living with a partner, nor engaged in a committed relationship. Nearly half of all young adults are single. Now, look at these numbers. 34% of women, twice as many, a whopping 63% of men. What explains that? I pulled the Pew study and I read with interest. Turns out since 2019, the share of single men who say they're looking for dates or a relationship has declined from 61% to 50%. In 2018, 28% of men ages 18 to 30 reported they'd had no sex in the past year, compared with 18% of women of that age. The Hill report said men in their 20s are more likely than women in their 20s to be romantically uninvolved, sexually dormant, friendless, and lonely. They stand at the vanguard of an epidemic of declining marriage, sexuality, and relationships that afflicts all of young America. Among the causes, among the factors, a reliance on social media and online porn. But also, more young women are hooking up with each other or dating and marrying slightly older men, and heterosexual women are getting more choosy. Other troubling statistics about men come from a 2021 study from the Survey Center for American Life. They found the share of men who have 6 or more close friends, which in 1990 was 55%, by 2021 had shrunk by half. Meanwhile, those with literally 0 close friends, which stood at 3% in 1990, has zoomed to 15%. An expert quoted by The Hill said this disconnect can have catastrophic consequences for young men. Quote, in the worst case scenario, the young American man's social disconnect can have tragic consequences. Young men commit suicide at 4 times the rate of young women. Younger women are largely responsible for rising rates of mass shootings, a trend that some researchers link to their growing social isolation. Well, those words reminded me of a conversation that I had over a year ago right here on CNN with NYU professor Scott Galloway. Us in the influence of social media and how relationships today, they don't come from, in our era, happenstance and mingling, right? They come from swiping, and that further accelerates this issue. Am I right?
Oh, it's been the chaser to it. I mean, to have an honest conversation about this, we have to be honest, and that is that men and women have different mating criteria. One quarter of men saying economic viability is a key criteria in a mate. 3/4 of women say that is important. And when you're on a 2-dimensional format, where now it's 1 and 2 relationships begin online, it used to be 1 and 4 just a few years ago, it gets distilled down to a small number of criteria. Specifically for men, it's does she look attractive? And specifically for men, is he able to signal his ability to garner resources in the future? An average attractive male on Tinder gets swiped less than 1% of the time. And there's 3 men on Tinder for every 1 woman. So you've distilled it, you've taken out one of the key components of mating dynamics, and that is vibe, humor, body language, pheromones, the ability to be, quite frankly, a little bit persistent in the pursuit of a romantic relationship. We have no third places anymore, no places to meet. People aren't going to bars, they aren't sports league, they aren't going to church, they aren't even going to work. So it gets distilled down to very 1 or 2-dimensional attributes. And the reality is women are much choosier than men, and they can apply those screens, and they allocate all of their attention to a small number of men that results in just essentially at the end of the day, a lack of opportunities. Chris Williams summarized it perfectly. He called it the high heels effect. In the last 40 years, more women have graduated from college than men, and they're not interested in mating with non-college grads. They now own more homes, single women than single men. So what you have is women say they won't date anyone shorter than them, 50% of them. Effectively, what you have metaphorically over the last 40 years is women have been getting taller and taller, and men have been getting shorter and shorter. How many of us have said, I know a ton of great single women, they can't find a date? That's not true. They can't find a date. They can't find a man they find economically or emotionally viable. If we don't make a massive investment in young people and make more economically and emotionally viable men, we're going to see a lack of household formation. We're going to see a decline in the middle class. And we're going to see, quite frankly, just a lot of young men who are terrible citizens. Anti-female. There's a lot of very unfortunate misogyny online that is masquerading as being pro-men. A lot of TikTok celebrities who talk about advocating for men, it's just thinly veiled misogyny. What do we need? We need more freshman seats in colleges. We need a massive investment in vocational training. We need to figure out a way to get more permitting for housing so young people can afford housing. We need to recognize our economic policies literally allocate wealth from young people to old people. The percentage of wealth that young people control under the age of 40 has been cut from 12% to 6%. These are concerted, deliberate decisions. We did away with the child tax credit. We don't want to make it any easier for people to have kids, but seniors just got their largest cost of living adjustment increase in history. We have made the decision to make it harder and more expensive for people to find each other, for people to mate, and for people to have children. And without children, we turn into Japan and Italy, and that is we go into population decline, and our economy goes into decline. We are about to become a society, by the turn of the century, there will be 8 times as many people over the age of 60 and half as many kids under the age of 5. Nursery schools will become these strange situations with old people staring through fences at these creatures they don't see in the wild called children. Is this the world we want? Do we want a lack of kids? Do we want a lack of ability to create households? The happiest, most prosperous, most purposeful people in America are middle-class families, and we have made a concerted decision to punch it in the gut and make it harder for that type of family formation, and we're going to lose prosperity and we're going to lose purpose.
Let's jump into my favorite part of all of the content I post on YouTube, and that's just my thoughts, where I get to kind of express what I feel about whatever we have read or gone over. So let's get into it. All right, let's get right into it about kind of the 5 points that I want to bring up from these TikTok videos about the crisis of boys and men and what it looks like in dating and how women can assess it early. So point number 1, emotional literacy deficit, when anger is the only allowed emotion. So when you're out here dating, men who default to irritation, sarcasm, defensiveness, stonewalling, or jokes, remember men don't joke, instead of naming their feelings, discomfort with vulnerability, masked as I'm just logical or I don't do emotions, and then conflicts can escalate really easily or he'll shut down completely. These are the signs. This man is emotionally deficient in terms of his literacy and being able to effectively manage himself and his own emotion. We have a lot of viral clips we see of men mocking therapy, emotional check-ins, or calling emotional women dramatic. You know what I mean? Podcast bro culture has made it to where men are ridiculing emotional intelligence as feminine or soft. And then celebrity examples where men publicly lash out after rejection or criticism rather than processing emotions privately. These are all very, very common. And we need to take note of this because they're all influencing and impacting the men who are in the dating pool. So a relationship coach tip here is listen for emotional range. Can he articulate sadness, disappointment, fear, or uncertainty, or does everything become anger? That's an unsafe man. Get away from him expeditiously and immediately. Watch conflict responses early. How a man manages conflict is so important to how he will treat you. A man who cannot self-regulate in small disagreements will not suddenly become emotionally safe later. He is an unsafe man, okay? Notice how he talks about emotions in others. Does he mock emotional expression in other men that do have healthy emotional expression? Does he mock women? He will eventually punish you for your emotions. Once again, this is unsafe man. Get away from him ASAP. Point number 2, identity confusion, outdated masculinity in a changed world. This is another point that is really causing a lot of crisis point of identity for young boys and grown men alike. What this looks like in dating is men who have an identity rooted solely in money, status, or dominance. And they have a lot of resentment when women don't financially depend on him. But on the same token, if you're not having sex with them and splitting on the first date, splitting a bill first date, you're a gold digger and you deserve nothing. So a lot of men are literally saying 2 different things at the same time, and they don't see that they are speaking opposing views because of this content that's being fed to them and this socialization that is being pushed in the popular media. Power struggles disguised as preferences or standards, and a lot of misogynoir too, okay? A lot of men punch down when they're resentful that women don't financially depend on them, but yet these same men don't have the level of career where they can afford to truly date the way they would want to, but any woman that has standards is a gold digger. Yeah. Podcast discourse complaining that women are too independent or don't need men anymore is very disingenuous. Public meltdowns when successful women out-earn or outgrow their partners, and in celebrity breakups where men express discomfort with women's visibility, success, or autonomy. These are all part of the things that are constantly being fed to us on a regular basis. So a relationship coaching tip here is to ask purpose-based questions early, such as, what feels meaningful to you right now? Or what are you building that excites you, right? Watch for rigidity. If he clings to how gender roles used to be, he will resist equality in practice. You will not have a healthy egalitarian relationship. at all. You will be oppressed, you will be dominated, and the attempt to control will show up in your relationship. And then notice competition versus collaboration. A man threatened by your growth will eventually try to shrink you. Pay attention to see if you're sleeping with the ops, okay? Because that's important. Leave those men alone. Point number 3, lack of mentorship and male community. Emotional dumping on women. What this looks like in dating is when a man has few or no emotionally intimate male relationships, right? They have an expectation that a romantic partner should be a therapist, a motivator, and an emotional regulator. He wants to get an all-in-one with one person, right? Oversharing trauma early without accountability or healing work. A lot of times that is a manipulative tactic that men with narcissistic personality traits and disorders use to try to wheel a woman in. And it is kind of a telltale sign. If that comes up early, you are with a man that's unsafe and he is intentionally trying to get you hooked so he can exploit your good heart, maybe your resources, whatever. If that happens early, take that as a sign you need to pivot and leave that man alone. So in the social media sphere where we see this, as well as in the news, we see this, as there are studies showing declining male friendships over the last 30 years, right? There's viral posts where men admit they only confide emotionally in romantic partners because they don't have no real ass friends. And then there's a lot of content where men ridicule other men for vulnerability, reinforcing isolation. So it's a male problem that they continue to bully each other, but they want to blame on women and say women don't allow us to express ourselves or women will hold it against us. Yes, you do have women who will do that, but for the vast majority of women, I believe they want a partner to open up to them in a healthy way, not dumping on them, but also he needs to have healthy friendships with people of his same gender, okay? A relationship coaching tip here is ask about his male friendships. Men with healthy male community tend to show better emotional regulation, right? Because he can go to a group of men that he trusts and be angry and maybe, hit a punching bag and they can talk it out, or they can, he has those very healthy ways of regulating himself. Track emotional labor early. If you're holding his emotional world within weeks, that's not intimacy. It's imbalance. And it's also you're playing mommy. Get the fuck out of there. And then notice reciprocity. Does he ask about your inner life or only unload his, right? That's a sign of a man who only cares about his comfort and his well-being. Point number 4, social withdrawal, avoidance framed as introversion. What this looks like in dating is you'll have men that have avoidance of social events, new environments, or meeting people. They have a lot of complaints about dating behavior, about being awkward or it taking too much effort. And then they have a passive dating style where women are expected to initiate, plan, and carry connection, but then they're upset when women don't want to do that. So on social media and cultural, some examples are men refusing to attend single events while claiming loneliness, online complaints about dating apps without attempting offline connection, and men don't approach any more discourse paired with zero skill building. So a lot of men who are saying this or bringing this to the fore, they're not in a place where they've grown, evolved, or have the desirable traits that women are looking for in partners. And then what we want to really look for, a relationship coaching tip here, is observe how he handles mild discomfort. Growth requires tolerating awkwardness. Emotionally avoidant men avoid repair. Notice initiative. A man who won't initiate connection will not initiate accountability. And real talk, if he won't initiate connection, girl, he don't like you. He's not that interested. Leave him alone and let him take his blasé ass somewhere else. And then watch for learned helplessness. Complaining without action predicts stagnation. And really, that's just a man who likes to complain. Point number 5, misplaced blame, women as the scapegoat. Ah, yes. What this looks like in dating is complaints about women's standards, feminism, or modern dating. Framing personal struggles as women's fault rather than a skill gap and his own poor decisions or piss poor personality. And resistance to feedback or growth conversations. He gets really mad or he shuts down or stomps away or whatever when you try to have those conversations. So some social and celebrity examples that we see. We hear this a lot on the Red Pill podcast. Where are all the good women gone? Rhetoric, dominating these male-centered spaces. And they're talking about the good old days and, in the times of their grandmother, not realizing the true, times and what those women went through. A lot of those women got married off as girls to grown-ass men, and they didn't have a choice. A lot of those women were abused. Those women didn't have any other options than to stay with this man that they were with. And in some cases, it actually worked out and they lived a very happy, healthy love story. But in many cases, it was abuse and a woman being held against her will. And they're looking at their grandmothers as a gold standard. Public figures are often blaming feminism for loneliness rather than addressing behavior. Viral clips where men reject accountability but demand empathy, like, well, they were caused harm, but when they end up feeling any of the consequences, they're mad at women because women don't want to, or don't feel empathy for them or sympathy for them. A relationship coaching tip here is listen for accountability language. I realize I need to work on is an example, versus women these days. Is he always talking about other? Is he ever talking about him? Was his portion of it? How he moves in dating? That's a big giveaway. Track self-reflection. Growth-oriented men talk about what they're learning, not who they're blaming. And believe patterns, not potential. Chronic blame rarely shifts without sustained internal work. And the reality is a lot of these men don't want to do this work. So let me know your thoughts below if you have experienced men who seem to be having their own, crisis of man with different facets of this argument, different parts of their identity, different ways of believing that they're the victim, how they speak about women, etc. Let me know your thoughts below. At the end of the day, leadership isn't something you announce. It's something people choose to follow. And if a man is constantly demanding submission instead of inspiring trust, clarity, and emotional safety, that's not leadership. That's insecurity in a costume. Strong women aren't the problem. A lack of vision, accountability, forward action, and emotional maturity is. If you're done shrinking, over-explaining, or trying to teach grown men how to lead themselves, it's time to move differently. If this conversation hit home and you're ready to date with discernment, clarity, and self-respect, join my exclusive coaching community on Coffee. That's where we go deeper, break patterns in real time, and give you the tools to assess behavior before you get emotionally invested. The link is in the description. Come sit at the table with women who are done settling and ready to move with intention.